Hello everybody and welcome to Minimalist Gourmet. Today I'll be showing you how to make the most delicious gluten-free strawberry shortcake. I'll show you how to make your own gluten-free flour blend, homemade shortcake, and strawberry whipped cream from scratch. If you stick around to the end, I'll even teach you how to make this strawberry cheesecake shortcake. Let's get started. We're going to kick things off by getting our strawberry puree ready for our whipped cream. This is going to consist of 2 cups of diced strawberries that we're going to put in a blender and blend until completely smooth. If you don't have a blender, no problem. You can use a potato masher or a fork and squash these down. It'll just take a little extra time. If you would like, you can strain this through a fine mesh sieve and get out the seeds, but I really don't find this necessary. So I'm going to transfer it directly into my pot here and place this over a medium-high heat so we can begin reducing this down. You do want to see it simmering fairly heavily, and we don't want to leave this alone. We're going to sit here and stir this continuously for about 10 or 15 minutes over medium-high heat while we drive off some of this water until it reduces down into a very thick, sweet paste just like this. You should be left with about a quarter to a half a cup of strawberry paste. It's going to be fairly thick. That's exactly what we want. We're going to place this into a bowl and spread it out, allow it to come down to room temperature completely, and then we're going to put it in the fridge for about 20 or 30 minutes. We want to make sure that it's nice and cold before continuing. For your flour, you can absolutely use a store-bought type of gluten-free flour if you prefer. However, if you'd like to make your own and save a few dollars, you can go with my recipe. This works great for most baked goods. It begins with 1 3/4 of a cup white rice flour, 1 cup brown rice flour, 1 3/4 of a cup potato starch, 1 1/3 cup corn flour, and for our binding agent, we'll add 2 teaspoons of xanthan gum. Now, it's very important that you mix this together very well before using. Once you've mixed it together, you can put this in a container that has a very tight-fitting lid and make sure to label it with what it is and the date that you've made it. Now you're ready to use this in any of your favorite baked good recipes that call for gluten-free flour. To make our shortbreads, we're going to begin by adding 2 1/4 cups of our gluten-free flour blend that we just made, along with 1 whole tablespoon of baking powder for our leavening agent. To make sure that all of our flavors pop, we're going to add 1/2 of a teaspoon of salt, and for sweetness, we're going to add 1/3 of a cup granulated white sugar. Give all of your dry ingredients a nice mix before we cut in our fat. Now, if you've seen the show before, you've seen me make biscuits and pie crusts and such. I have a very good technique that is foolproof. First of all, you need to freeze your butter until it's frozen solid. Then we're going to take a grater and actually grate the butter directly into our dry ingredients. This creates a very fantastic texture and is one of the best and easiest ways that I've seen to make foolproof baked goods. This gives you a little bit more leeway when making baked goods because your butter is frozen solid and therefore it's going to stay cold longer, and you've already broken it into very, very small pieces before you even cut it into your dry ingredients. Speaking of, we need to cut this into our flour mixture, and you can do this with a pastry cutter, which I don't have, so we're going to use a fork. You just want to go along and continuously press this down until you get a consistency that looks a little bit like wet sand or fine cornmeal. And now we're going to mix our wet ingredients, which will be separate from our dry ingredients for right now. This consists of 2/3 of a cup milk, 1/2 a teaspoon vanilla extract, and 1 egg. Make sure to mix all your wet ingredients until they're thoroughly mixed up here before we pour them directly on top of our dry ingredients. The reason that we mixed our dry ingredients and our wet ingredients separately was that we don't want to overmix it once we add them together. That will create a more dense, kind of less fluffy texture. So once we bring these together, you do want to mix them just as little as possible until it just comes together in one cohesive ball, just like this. Once you don't see any big streaks of flour, you know you're ready. Lightly flour your work surface so your dough doesn't stick as we roll it out. Place your dough ball directly on top here, and we're going to put a little bit more flour on top so that our hands don't stick. The dough looks fairly shaggy now, but that's fine because we're going to work it in its final stages here. Press it out into a flat disc and then fold it from left to right. Now press it back down again into a flat disc, and this time fold it from top to bottom. We're going to repeat this, pressing it down into a disc, folding from left to right, pressing it down, and folding it from top to bottom about 8 times. What this is doing is creating hundreds and hundreds of layers of butter and flour that will bake up beautifully in the oven. This is how you get that nice high rise of crispy layers of your dough. After 8 folds, your dough should come together nicely and look like this. Now, if you'd like, you can keep this as a round and cut it into slices or triangles and make it look like a scone. I'm going to press mine out into a rectangle and cut it into 6 portions. I like mine nice and thick, so I'm going to do 6 portions, but if you'd like, you can roll it a little thinner and cut it into 9 portions. Now, my knife started to stick here as I was cutting my dough. So, a little tip for you, if you coat your knife blade in some flour, it should cut a lot easier and not tear your dough, making a nice crisp cut in your dough. Additionally, you absolutely want to use a sharp knife when cutting your dough. If you use something dull, say like a spatula or something, when you press it down, it's going to crush those beautiful layers that you just folded together, and these won't rise nearly as well in the oven. By using a sharp knife, you'll cut directly through them, not damaging the surface or pressing those beautiful layers that you made together. Place these onto a baking sheet that's either non-stick or lined with aluminum and no-stick cooking spray or some parchment paper as I'm doing in my case. Make sure that there is a gap of about a half inch between each piece and place these into a preheated 400-degree oven for 15 to 17 minutes. After baking, mine looked like these directly out of the oven and I'm quite happy with them. They have a nice consistent color across the top, even cracking, and this is exactly what we want to see. Now, to check to make sure these are done, I like to use feel. So I'm just going to go ahead and go around touching the sides here to make sure that it's nice and solid. Touch the top part here as well as the cracks to make sure there isn't really any moisture in there. And these look good to me. So I'm going to go ahead and pull them off the baking tray. That way they don't continue to cook from the heat of the pan. Additionally, as these cool, we don't want any moisture collecting underneath on that bottom surface. I don't have a cooling rack, but this little rack for my toaster oven should work just fine. While our cakes are cooling, let's make our strawberry whipped cream. Our strawberry paste from earlier has cooled completely in the fridge, and we're going to add this to a large mixing bowl. We're going to add half a teaspoon vanilla extract, along with 2 tablespoons of powdered sugar. Finally, 1 cup of heavy whipping cream goes in. Now we're going to blend this. I'll be using my electric hand mixer here. If you don't have one, that's not a problem at all. You can actually use a whisk. It's just going to take a little bit longer. You can also do this in a stand mixer if you have one. I actually prefer my whipped cream in this case not to be extremely firm, so I only beat it about half as much as I normally would. If you'd like it to be a lot thicker, you can beat it longer until it reaches stiff peaks, but for me, this texture is great, so I'm going to go ahead and stop right here. Before we go to assembly, let's take a look at our shortcakes. As you can see, these have a beautiful amount of layers here that puffed up very nicely, and our folding technique worked great. These came out excellent, and you wouldn't even know that they're gluten-free. For assembly, I'm going to start by cutting our shortcakes right down the center. Remember, these are a little bit crumbly, so do use a sharp knife and take your time. You want to split it right down the center like a sandwich and pull the top off so we can start assembly. Wash, hull, and slice 3 or 4 strawberries so that we can place them in between and on top of our shortcake. And we can move on to assembly. Begin by placing the base of your shortbread down on a plate, and then we're going to add a nice amount of our sliced strawberries as a base layer. Next up, we're going to place a couple of heavy dollops of our strawberry whipped cream directly on top of our strawberries and spread this out into a nice even layer. Following this, we're going to place the top of our shortbread directly on top of the whipped cream and continue on with another layer of our strawberry whipped cream. We're going to put it just 1 dollop here on top and then finish this off with a few sliced strawberries for garnish. And now you have the most delicious strawberry shortcake that I guarantee will impress you, your friends, and your family. This is a must make recipe. Trust me on this one, guys. You don't want to miss out. And now I'm going to show you how to make my strawberry cheesecake shortcake. That's right, you heard me correctly. This is going to begin with my homemade 3-ingredient strawberry jam. Keep your eyes peeled because in about a week, I'm going to release a video to show you how to make this super simple jam. And when I do, I will make sure to leave a link in the description below so that you can follow that video. We're going to place a nice spoonful of this jam directly onto our bottom layer here and spread it out. Then we're going to add a nice thick layer of my no-bake cheesecake filling. Again, in about a week, I'll be releasing a video here that's going to show you how to make this no-bake cheesecake filling. It is an absolutely delicious recipe you do not want to miss. Again, I will leave a link in the description below when I do release that. So we're going to spread a nice layer here on top of our jam and then top it with the top of our shortbread. I whipped up some real quick whipped cream by putting some heavy whipping cream into my blender and running it for about 15 seconds. We're going to put a nice dollop of that on top and then finish this off with some freshly sliced strawberry pieces. And guys, it really is just that easy to make these two delicious versions of strawberry shortcake in your own home tonight. I really hope you enjoyed these recipes today. I do think they're special, and I hope you learned a little something. Thank you so much for watching. I do appreciate your time today, and I hope to see you again here on the next episode of Minimalist Gourmet.